It was a quiet morning in the heart of the bustling city. The streets were alive with the sounds of vendors calling, the soft clatter of carriage wheels, and the faint rustle of autumn leaves. Amid this ordinary chaos walked a man whose wealth was known to all. His polished boots gleamed, his coat pristine, and his every step spoke of authority. He was a man used to getting what he wanted, accustomed to the world bending in his favor, and blind to anything that didn't serve his purpose. Yet beside him walked his young son, a boy not yet hardened by the world, whose eyes absorbed every detail. The laughter, the struggles, the lives unnoticed by the man who led him. This boy had begun to see things differently, though he did not yet fully understand the weight of what he saw. As they strolled down a familiar street, a figure appeared by the side of the road, a beggar, sitting silently, her eyes tired but observant. She did not plead or demand. She simply existed, a presence unnoticed by most. The rich man, as he always did, walked past without a word, a slight frown twisting his face at her perceived intrusion on his orderly world. The son, however, stopped. He looked back, his gaze lingering, tracing the lines of her face, the shape of her hands, the sorrow in her posture. A quiet voice whispered inside him, something familiar, something that stirred an ache in his chest he could not yet name. "Why don't you help her, father?" he asked softly, his words almost lost in the morning bustle. The man scoffed, dismissing the question as childish curiosity. "She is nothing to us. Move along," he said, pulling his son gently forward. But the boy could not. Something in that silence, in the stillness of the beggar's presence, called to him. It was as if time slowed and the world around him faded, leaving only the two of them in that small fragment of the street. His heart beat faster. A memory stirred, distant yet vivid, like the echo of a song he thought he had forgotten. The rich man hurried on, oblivious to the growing storm inside his son. He did not notice the way the boy's eyes softened, how a tear nearly formed at the corner of his eye, how a question he could not yet voice took root in his mind. The boy's thoughts drifted, of his mother, though she had been absent for as long as he could remember. He remembered her laughter, the warmth of her hand, the gentle way she had soothed him during storms of every kind. And yet, he could not place her here, in this worn cloak, sitting quietly by the street. And still, a feeling, fragile yet insistent, told him that he had seen her somewhere before, though he could not remember when. Minutes passed like hours. The rich man's footsteps faded into the distance, leaving the boy standing alone. The city moved around him, oblivious. He took a cautious step forward, then stopped, frozen by the weight of recognition he did not fully understand. The beggar shifted slightly, her eyes lifting to meet his, and in that glance, a connection sparked, a silent acknowledgement that words could not yet define. Something unspoken passed between them, a memory buried beneath layers of pain and separation, waiting patiently to surface. The boy's heart swelled with questions, with confusion, with longing. He wanted to call out, to run, to embrace, but the fear of the unknown held him still. He realized that the world he had known, the life of luxury and detachment, was suddenly inadequate, meaningless against the depth of what he felt in that moment. And so, he lingered, caught between childhood innocence and the stirrings of profound recognition. The city continued its relentless rhythm, indifferent, unaware, but for the boy, nothing would ever be the same again. He took a deep breath, one final look at the woman who stirred a fragment of memory he could not yet name. And then, slowly, reluctantly, he followed his father, carrying the weight of a question that refused to leave him. A silence fell behind them. The beggar did not move, did not call, did not beg. She simply watched, waiting, patient, as though she knew that the boy would return to this moment again, in thought, in memory, in recognition, before the truth could finally reveal itself. And so, the morning passed, ordinary to everyone else, extraordinary to one boy who had glimpsed something eternal, something that would shape the course of his heart and his life forever. The day moved on, the sun rising higher, bathing the streets in golden light. But for the boy, The brightness of the city could not pierce the shadow that had settled in his chest. Every corner, every face, every sound seemed to pull him back to the quiet figure he had glimpsed yesterday. The beggar woman haunted his thoughts, not as a stranger, but as something familiar, something forgotten yet impossibly close. He could not speak of it to his father. The rich man was busy with appointments, merchants, and the endless concerns of wealth and status. The boy's words would have been brushed aside, deemed childish, trivial, unworthy of attention. And so he carried the question alone, like a secret burden pressing against his ribs. At school, in the quiet hours between lessons, he drew pictures in the margins of his notebook. Sketches of a woman with tired eyes, of a cloak worn thin by time, of hands folded in silent resignation. He did not understand why he drew her, only that the need to put the image on paper compelled him. Each line, each curve, brought a rush of recognition, a heartbeat of memory, though the source of it remained buried. Walking home, he found himself retracing the streets where he had seen her. Each step echoed with hesitation and hope. He imagined her standing there, as if waiting for him, and he felt a strange pull in his chest, a longing that made his legs move almost to their own accord. He remembered snippets of his mother, soft hands brushing his hair, a voice that hummed lullabies, laughter that rang in the corners of a home he could barely recall. And yet, the memory was hazy, as though viewed through a misted window. The boy clenched his fists, fighting back tears he did not understand. He wanted to call out, to run into her arms, but caution, fear, and the need for certainty held him back. Meanwhile, the rich man went about his life, unaware of the storm stirring in his son. Meetings, appointments, and transactions filled his hours, and the boy's questions were met with a nod or a dismissive wave. The gulf between them grew, not through malice, but through ignorance. The father could not see what the boy now saw so clearly, a life, a presence, a truth that demanded recognition. Days passed, and the boy observed the beggar from a distance whenever he could. He noticed small details, the way she tilted her head when watching children play, the careful way she avoided tripping over stones, the faint scar that ran along her wrist, a mark he had seen before, though he could not place when or where. Each observation deepened the knot in his chest, a mixture of fear, hope, and a longing for clarity. One afternoon, he ventured closer, standing at the edge of the street, hiding behind a fruit cart as he watched her. He whispered to himself, trying to convince his heart that it was only imagination, that perhaps it was another woman, another life. But when she lifted her eyes, he saw the same weary but tender gaze, and his heart refused to lie to him. Something undeniable existed in that look, a connection that transcended explanation. That night, in the quiet of his room, the boy replayed the moments over and over. He remembered a lullaby, a small hand brushing his cheek, a kiss that smelled faintly of flowers. He felt it again, the ache of absence and the pull of a presence he could not yet claim. His father's voice called from downstairs, but he ignored it, lost in the whirlwind of memories. He wrote in his journal, carefully choosing words that hinted at recognition without revealing too much. He drew the woman again, every detail sharper, every expression clearer. His heart raced as he traced the line of her mouth, the slope of her shoulders, the gentleness of her eyes. The connection was growing stronger, undeniable. And yet, he feared the revelation. What if he was wrong? What if he imagined it? What if the truth, when it came, broke not only his heart, but the fragile balance of his family's life? These thoughts haunted him as he lay in bed, staring at the ceiling, the quiet ticking of the clock echoing the rhythm of his own uncertainty. He could not sleep. He thought of the beggar woman, of the possibility that she was his mother, and of the life that had been lost to time and circumstance. The world outside continued in its indifferent rhythm, but within him a storm raged, a storm of hope, fear, and longing, each emotion feeding the other, impossible to separate. By morning, the boy made a silent vow to himself. He would learn the truth. He would watch, observe, and understand. And when the moment came, he would know with certainty. Until then, He would carry the memory, the glimpses, the quiet recognition that refused to be silenced. As he left the house and stepped onto the street, his eyes immediately sought her figure. She was there, waiting, patient, unknowing, yet somehow intimately connected to the boy's heart. He stopped, just as he had before, and for a moment the world held its breath. The city's noise faded, the sun's warmth became a distant hum, and all that remained was a boy and a woman, connected by memory, longing, and a truth he was only beginning to grasp. And in that quiet, the first threads of revelation began to weave themselves into his heart, hinting that the story he had glimpsed yesterday was only the beginning. The morning air was crisp, carrying the faint scent of fallen leaves and distant bread ovens. The streets, alive with the everyday rhythm of the city, seemed smaller, quieter, as if they had shrunk around the boy. He walked slowly, heart beating in a rhythm he could not control, eyes fixed on the familiar figure sitting by the side of the street. The beggar woman stirred slightly as he approached, her gaze lifting with a calm awareness that sent shivers down his spine. Something deep inside him recognized the tilt of her head, the curve of her shoulders, the weary strength in her hands. He stopped, frozen in a moment that stretched infinitely, the city fading around him. Memories surged forward, unbidden. A lullaby hummed softly in his mind, the feel of a warm hand brushing his hair, a gentle voice whispering comfort during storms of childhood. Every memory collided with the present, every detail confirming what he had feared and hoped at once. It's her, he whispered, barely audible, almost afraid that speaking aloud would shatter the fragile truth. He remembered the day she had left, long ago, the confusion and emptiness it had left behind, and the countless nights he had lain awake wondering where she had gone, if she thought of him, if she had even survived. And now, she sat before him, invisible to everyone else, but fully present to him. The boy's chest tightened, emotions surging in an unstoppable wave. Joy, relief, fear, disbelief, longing. He wanted to rush forward, to embrace her, to demand answers, but something restrained him. He realized that this moment was fragile, delicate, like glass balanced on the edge of a table. One wrong move, one word, and it might shatter entirely. He studied her face, committing every detail to memory. The faint lines of age and hardship, the softness beneath her fatigue, the eyes that mirrored his own in the depths of their sorrow. Recognition bloomed into certainty, certainty into a pulse of hope that he could almost touch. And yet, fear lingered. How could he tell his father? How could the truth emerge without destroying the life they had known? The rich man, immersed in his world of wealth and control, would never understand this moment, this connection, this history reaching across the years. The boy's gaze faltered for a moment, caught between the urge to call her name and the need to remain silent. The beggar woman's eyes met his, a spark of recognition flashing, subtle, fleeting, almost imperceptible. It was enough. Enough to confirm, enough to anchor him in the reality he had sensed but could not yet fully claim. Time seemed to stretch. The city's noise dulled, the clatter of carts, the laughter of children, the shouts of vendors, all faded to a distant hum. For the boy, there was only her, the slow, deliberate awareness that she too remembered, though her mind was clouded by the years and hardship. He thought of the stories she had whispered once, long ago, of love and struggle, of sacrifice and loss. The fragments came back now, clearer, sharper, each one a thread weaving him closer to the truth. He could see it in her posture, in the slight nod, in the way her gaze lingered on him for a heartbeat longer than any stranger would. The boy took a careful step forward, heart hammering. "Mother," he breathed, the word trembling on his lips. It was a soft, tentative offering, a test of reality, a plea and a hope entwined. The woman's eyes widened, and for a moment, silence enveloped them both. Recognition, disbelief, and relief danced across her face. She reached out slowly, hesitantly, as though testing whether the boy was real, whether this was truth or another cruel trick of memory and longing. "Yes," she whispered, her voice a fragile thread connecting the years of separation, the pain of absence, the joy of reunion. "It is you." A tear slid down her cheek, and the boy felt his own tears fall freely, unrestrained. Years of longing, confusion, and hope cascaded in a torrent of emotion, washing away the distance and fear. The recognition was complete, undeniable, irreversible. But in the shadow of this revelation, one question loomed, heavy and unavoidable. What of the father? The man who had turned away, who had ignored the world beyond his wealth, who remained blind to the human drama unfolding at his feet. How would he confront this truth, and what storm would follow? The boy's heart pounded with anticipation, the weight of the future pressing upon him. He took a deep, steadying breath and vowed silently to himself that he would protect this moment, nurture it, and prepare for the confrontation that was inevitable. The beggar woman smiled faintly, a smile that carried both sorrow and hope. She had waited for recognition, for understanding, for reconciliation, and it had finally arrived through the eyes of her son. And as the city carried on unaware, the boy and his mother remained locked in this quiet moment of connection, timeless, fragile, and profound. The sun had begun its slow descent, casting long shadows across the streets and rooftops. The city carried on with its familiar rhythm, unaware of the storm building within one household. Inside the rich man's mansion, the boy paced silently, mind racing, heart hammering. The weight of the truth he had glimpsed, the recognition of the beggar as his mother, pressed heavily on him. He could no longer keep it contained, and yet he knew the delicate balance of the family's world demanded caution. His father sat in his study, immersed in accounts and ledgers, eyes scanning numbers, fingers tapping on papers, mind focused on wealth and control. To the rich man, the world was orderly, predictable, and entirely within his grasp. But the boy had seen another world unfold before him, a world of absence, longing, and human connection that wealth could not buy. He entered the study quietly, standing by the doorway, and waited for the right moment. His father glanced up, nodding absent-mindedly, and returned to his calculations. The boy took a deep breath. "Father," he said, voice calm but firm, "there is something you must see." The man looked up sharply, annoyance flickering across his face. "What is it?" "I am busy." The boy stepped closer, choosing his words carefully. "Do you remember the woman you ignored the other day by the street?" The rich man frowned. "A beggar?" "Yes. I see many every day." "What?" The boy's heart beat faster, but he held his composure. "She is someone important, someone you need to understand. I think she might be mother." Silence fell. The rich man's eyes widened, disbelief clouding his expression. "Mother? That woman?" He laughed nervously, a sound that did not reach his eyes. "Impossible. She has been gone for years." "What nonsense is this?" The boy did not reply. Instead, he described what he had seen, the details that made his certainty undeniable. The tilt of her head, the curve of her shoulders, the softness beneath the fatigue, the faint scar on her wrist, the way her eyes mirrored his own. He spoke calmly, steadily, painting the picture in a way that left no room for doubt. The rich man rose from his chair, pacing, a mixture of anger, confusion, and disbelief twisting his features. "Why didn't anyone tell me?" he demanded, voice rising. "Why was this hidden from me all these years?" The boy shook his head. "No one knew, father. Not even I until now. She has been waiting, patient, silent, enduring, and now she waits for understanding." The father's hands trembled slightly as he ran them through his hair. Pride, fear, guilt, and regret collided within him. The world he had built, his wealth, his control, his authority, suddenly seemed fragile, meaningless in the face of the truth. The son watched, sensing the tension, feeling the gravity of the moment, knowing that this confrontation could either break them or begin the healing. The boy continued, gently, recounting every detail he had observed, every moment that had led him to certainty. He spoke not with anger, but with clarity and compassion, guiding his father to see what he had refused to acknowledge. Minutes stretched into an eternity as the rich man absorbed the reality. The air in the room was heavy with anticipation, regret, and the unspoken bonds of love that had been stretched thin across years of absence. Finally, the man stopped pacing and sank into a chair, burying his face in his hands. I cannot believe, he whispered, voice breaking. All these years, I ignored her. I ignored you. Tears welled in the boy's eyes. He stepped forward, placing a hand gently on his father's shoulder. It is not too late, father. She is here now. We can make it right. The rich man lifted his gaze, eyes moist, searching his son's face for truth, for understanding, for guidance. He saw it there, steadfast, unwavering, filled with hope and courage. And for the first time in years, he felt the weight of his pride dissolve, replaced by something far stronger: love, empathy, and the beginning of reconciliation. Outside, the beggar woman watched from a distance, sensing the change, the opening of a door that had been closed for far too long. She did not speak, did not move, but her presence was enough. She waited, patient, knowing that the family's journey toward reunion had begun. The boy and his father spoke quietly then, words gentle, deliberate, as the man began to understand the depth of what he had overlooked. It was a beginning, fragile yet profound, and the tension of years began to give way to the possibility of healing. End of Chapter 4, Cliffhanger. The family was on the brink of reunion, yet the shadows of the past and the weight of pride still lingered. Would the mother step forward fully? Could the rich man embrace the truth without fear or regret? The answers waited just beyond the next chapter. The morning light spilled gently into the mansion, soft and golden, illuminating spaces that had long felt cold and distant. The air was thick with anticipation, each heartbeat echoing the tension that had been building for years. Inside, the boy stood beside his father, eyes fixed on the doorway where a presence waited, silent, patient, yet impossibly powerful in its emotional gravity. She stepped inside slowly, her figure poised yet frail, every movement carrying the weight of years spent in absence, suffering, and longing. The beggar woman of the streets was now more than a shadow of her former self. She was the mother, alive and present, her eyes reflecting a mixture of relief, fear, and hope. The boy's breath caught. Every memory, every fragment of longing crystallized in this moment. He wanted to run to her, to feel her warmth, to erase the years of separation with a single embrace. But he waited silently, as the delicate balance of the moment demanded patience. The rich man's eyes widened, disbelief giving way to realization. He stepped forward hesitantly, unsure, as though afraid the vision before him might vanish. "It's really you?" he asked, voice trembling. She nodded, a faint, fragile smile gracing her lips. "Yes," she whispered, voice soft yet resolute. "It has been a long journey, but I am here." The boy could no longer contain himself. He rushed forward, arms outstretched, tears streaming freely, and embraced his mother. The world narrowed to the warmth of her touch, the familiar scent, the soft heartbeat that echoed his own. Years of longing, of unanswered questions, of absence and memory, melted in that single, profound moment. The father remained still for a heartbeat, watching, absorbing the reality of what he had overlooked for so long. Pride, guilt, and regret waged war within him. But the sight of his son and wife united, the undeniable truth of their love, pierced through the layers of control and arrogance he had built around his heart. He took a cautious step forward, hands trembling. I was blind," he admitted, voice breaking. "I failed to see what was right in front of me. But I am here now. I want to make it right." Tears welled in the mother's eyes. She reached out, touching his hands, feeling the hesitance, the remorse, and the sincerity. "It is not too late," she said gently. "We can begin again, together." The boy squeezed her hand, his heart full of relief and joy. The silence between them was heavy with emotion, yet comforting, filled with the unspoken understanding that years of separation could never erase the bond they shared. Outside, the world continued its indifferent rhythm, but inside the mansion, time seemed to pause. Every breath, every glance, every gesture spoke volumes. The family, fractured by absence and circumstance, was now reunited, tentative yet strong, fragile yet enduring. They spoke softly, sharing fragments of stories, of hardships endured, of longing and sorrow, of hope and dreams deferred. Laughter mingled with tears, sorrow with relief, as the weight of years began to lift, replaced by the warmth of recognition, love, and renewed connection. The father knelt slightly before his wife and son, a gesture of humility and reconciliation. "I cannot undo the past," he said, voice thick with emotion, "but I can promise to cherish the present and build a future worthy of us." The mother smiled, a tear tracing her cheek, and nodded. "We will face it together," she said. The boy hugged both of them, feeling the unity, the love, the bond that had survived despite time and distance. The days that followed the reunion were gentle yet profound. The mansion, once echoing with the rigid rhythm of wealth and control, now carried a different sound, the soft murmur of understanding, laughter, and tentative conversation. The boy moved between his parents, feeling the invisible threads of love strengthen with each passing hour. The father had become quieter, reflective. The pride that once dictated his every action had softened into humility, and he began to see the world through eyes that had been blinded by status and ambition. He watched his wife, feeling the weight of lost years, yet grateful for the second chance life had offered. The mother, once a shadow of hardship and absence, now carried herself with renewed dignity. She spoke gently, her voice a balm to both her son and husband, guiding them through the fragile terrain of reconciliation. Every word, every glance, every touch spoke of patience, forgiveness, and hope. The boy observed them both, heart full of wonder. He realized that families are not defined solely by presence, but by love, recognition, and the courage to face the past together. He had witnessed the fragility of human pride, the pain of absence, and the strength of empathy, and he understood, perhaps for the first time, the depth of connection that binds a family. Conversations were slow at first. Memories were shared carefully, with sensitivity and care. Laughter emerged between tears, and tears mingled with smiles. Stories of the mother's survival, of the hardships she endured, were told with honesty, painting a picture of resilience and quiet strength. The father listened, his heart heavy with regret yet buoyed by hope, realizing that love, though strained, could still endure. Outside, the city continued its indifferent rhythm, but inside the mansion, time seemed to bend. Moments stretched, filled with the subtleties of emotion, the lingering glance, the brush of a hand, the comfort of shared silence. Each day built upon the last, a careful reconstruction of trust, empathy, and familial bond. The father approached his son one evening, as the sun set and bathed the room in soft amber light. "I have learned," he said, voice quiet but sincere, "that wealth means nothing without love. I have failed in many ways, but I promise to be present, to listen, to care. I will not squander this second chance." The boy smiled, tears glistening in his eyes. "We are together now. That is what matters." The mother joined them, embracing both with warmth and reassurance. "We have all suffered, all grown," she said softly. "But together we can heal. Together we can live fully with honesty and love." In the weeks that followed, their family life blossomed. Shared meals, quiet walks, laughter echoing through the halls. Each small gesture carried the weight of years reconciled. The past was acknowledged, honored, and left behind, not as a burden, but as a testament to endurance and the power of recognition. The boy often reflected on the journey, understanding that life is fragile, relationships delicate, and the human heart resilient beyond measure. He had witnessed pride give way to humility, absence transform into presence, and misunderstanding bloom into clarity. He had seen sorrow turn to joy, despair to hope, and distance collapse into the intimacy of family. As the sun rose and set, as days turned into months, the family remained bound by the lessons of the past and the love of the present. The mansion, once a symbol of status and cold authority, now stood as a home filled with empathy, laughter, and quiet strength. And in the stillness of evening, as the boy lay in bed, he smiled softly. The world outside was vast and unpredictable, but inside, love had found its way home. The journey had been long, the lessons hard, but the heart, resilient and hopeful, had prevailed.